Hello, listeners, and welcome back to the Dear Forest podcast. So, today's episode will not be an interview. So, this is not a small introduction from me about what I'm going to talk about with somebody else. This is an introduction of a conversation I will be having with you, the listener, potentially, or with your thoughts, whatever works best for you. But yeah, so if you haven't had a chance to read the title or the description yet, today's episode will be about climate anxiety. So originally this episode was supposed to be about, talking about the good things that are happening, and I will still do an episode about the good things that are happening because there are lots of good things happening, but it just felt a little bit tone deaf to me to kind of do so many episodes about the connections between so many different things and deforestation, and then just suddenly do an episode talking about the good things that are happening without acknowledging the reason why I would have to have an episode on the good things happening. Yeah, and so climate anxiety. So I think a good starting point is to tell you what the official or unofficial definition of climate anxiety is. So UNICEF defines it as heightened emotional, mental, or physical distress in response to dangerous changes in the climate. And yeah, I think that's a very general description. I think it looks different for different people. So for me, the word distress is accurate, but I think the word distress is also not all encompassing because, there's just so many emotions around it. I think the term is climate anxiety, but for me, there are so many other emotions that I associate with climate anxiety, and yeah, it's a little bit complicated. I think everybody can have their own definition. So I would appreciate it if you took a second to think about what it means for you, because we all also look at the issue from very different perspectives. So according to what you think is important or what you will value in your life in the future, what defines climate anxiety for you will look completely different to what it's defined as for me. So I think the best way to kind of start is to maybe tell you a little bit about my journey to climate consciousness. So if you heard the very first episode, the trailer episode, you will have heard that I was born and raised in Botswana. And I grew up there for about 12 years. And I spoke about this mascot that was a drop of water, and how that was kind of my first taste of climate having an impact of on your life before you have an awareness. And I was really young when this was all happening. I was 5 years old, so I didn't really have all the awareness that I have now at 21 years old. And I think for me, the beginning of climate consciousness was probably just before I started uni. So I'm part of the unlucky group of people that graduated during COVID. It was really, really hard. Just in general, that was your final year of high school, so school was the hardest, and you weren't seeing your friends anymore, and after your last year of high school, you weren't going to see them again ever, potentially, and it's held true. It's been about 5 years, and I still haven't seen some of my closest friends in 5 years. But in general, around that time, we spent a lot of time on our phones, on the internet, and I distinctly remember seeing pictures and videos of nature healing itself while human beings were locked up and tucked away because of the pandemic, right? So it was our turn to be caged, I guess. And that was kind of the first time that I really started to think deeply about it. I think before that, I kind of appreciated the natural world quite a bit, especially because if you have been to Botswana or know anything about Botswana, you know that there's green or a tree on every corner. It's just the way that our cities are designed. Not everything is built up. So, yeah. And then after that, the high school that I went to was very outdoorsy, and like we were encouraged to do a lot of like outdoor activities like kayaking, hiking. And so I was very much like surrounded by green and by the natural world. And it's like where I feel the most comfortable. So when I eventually moved to a city, I live in Antwerp. And for anybody that doesn't know Antwerp, it is just concrete. Like, you see a tree every couple of meters in a little square, where that is like the only square of like actual ground that you see, like for like a couple of meters. And it drives me crazy. And especially because I started uni in Belgium during the pandemic as well. So it's not like I could leave the city that easily to go be in a green space, right? Because there were mandates about like where you could go and where you couldn't go. And so when I first moved here, I really, really struggled just because, yeah, I'm a student. So I was living in student accommodation, middle of the city, not very green friendly or anything. I think the most nature that you see is like a park, and the parks are the size of barely anything in a city. So I think it's still a privilege to have had access to some kind of a green space. But yeah, I was not coping, and I think that was my first realization that I am absolutely not a city girl at all. I don't enjoy the city that much. I think the convenience is nice because you've got lots of stores and it's easy to get around because the public transport is good. I can't drive, so a bit of context there. But other than that, I really just don't enjoy it. Like, it's not what I would choose for myself, and it's not something I'm going to choose for my future if it's possible. Yeah, so just at the beginning of uni, back to the point, at the beginning of uni, I kind of became conscious of the fact that being able to be in green spaces is in and of itself a privilege. So having access to spaces where your air is not polluted and your senses can freely like move. I think you can almost feel in your body when something is okay for you and something is good for you. And so I think that was like one of my first realizations of like the fact that I think when we think of privilege, we think of like economic privilege or like social privilege and like other kinds of privilege, but also access to green spaces and like healthy spaces is also a massive privilege, and not a privilege that like lots of people have either. And also a privilege that is becoming like less and less because our planet is just getting more and more polluted, right? So even people that have access to pretty good green spaces, those spaces are not nearly as clean as what like people had like 100 years ago or something. But that was kind of where it all started for me in terms of like being conscious of the fact that there is a privilege that I'm experiencing and not everybody has access to it, and there's a reason why not everybody has access to it. Yeah. And so just on the emotions outside of anxiety, for me, I also feel a lot of fear, which I think will be true for a lot of people. Just fear of what will come in the future, fear of what is happening at the moment. And yeah, so I think the fear for us is also made a lot worse by the media. So not just news media, but also social media. So for social media, a big part of it is the algorithms that keep us scrolling. So you will see one thing that will, say for instance, for me, a lot of my algorithm is filled with a lot of like things about sustainability, politics, and the like. And so most of the time I will get some kind of alarming news. There's always alarming news. Social media is my primary news source, or it was my primary news source. And so you'll see something like crazy. You like read something and you're like, what? And then you scroll, and the next second you get like some funny like video of something, and then you're laughing in the next second, right? So this algorithm is created to keep you scrolling. And so subconsciously, you're taking in way, way more of the bad information, and you're also getting really, really stressed out. I don't think you realize how much your body absorbs without you even paying attention. And so that's where I think for me a big part of my fear comes from, but also news media has a role to play in this. And when I say news media, I mean like, you know, newspapers and TV channels, most of which now distribute their content primarily through social media because they've realized that there's a massive audience there. And so they've chosen to spend their time fear mongering because that drives clicks, and they've noticed that like it sells, you know, so they can make more money if they are focused on making you as afraid as possible. So you continue to read the news to like subconsciously try and like abate your fear, to kind of like find ways to cure the fear that you feel, but it's never truly cured because once one thing goes out of the news cycle, there's another thing that comes into the news cycle that makes you even more afraid, even more freaked out, even more stressed and worried, you know, about the future. And so it's honestly like a vicious cycle. I think it's disgusting that they're making money off of our fear and our anxiety. And I think it's something that I've thought about very deeply recently, just because I had a close friend like say to me, like, I don't understand how you stay sane if you read the news constantly. And it's true, because if your phone is on you, you are constantly like getting updates about things happening like kilometers and kilometers away from you, like things that are not in your immediate environment. And is that a good thing? Yes, because there's more connectivity between us, and like it means that as a collective we can fight against the climate crisis much better. But it also means that you are constantly bombarded with information that your mind is not used to having. Like, you need to remember that the way that our minds function is not well suited to the current environment and the current technological advancements. So your brain is very much still accustomed to quote unquote the wild. So years and years ago, when civilization looked very different to what it looks like today. And so your brain is not going to have a rational reaction or something. Like, your brain is going to react very much in the most primitive way, fight or flight, fight or freeze, that kind of thing. And so, yeah, I think it's disgusting that they make this much money off of us. And so for me, I have made a conscious choice to stay off of social media. So it's really difficult in the beginning, but once you start, you almost like don't even notice. So right now, I just use, if I need to use social media for something, like if there's a friend that I need to like message and I don't have their phone number or something, then I'll go on my laptop, like on my computer, because then I can close it. I can't take my laptop with me everywhere. And I think it's made a massive, massive difference for me. I have so much more time for other things. Like, I've been reading a lot more and just like doing other things. Like, you don't even realize how much time you lose to social media until you stop going on social media. I will say that I'm a bit guilty of finding other things to scroll on, like Pinterest, for instance. Less toxic, but still problematic. But it's just cute photos, so I think it's okay for now. But yeah. And I think another emotion that I feel a lot as well is anger. I think it's something that's very common, actually. It's something that when I speak to my other friends is a very like common emotion. I think just because we feel like we're living in a reality that we did not choose for ourselves, and we are kind of hurtling towards a future that we also did not choose for ourselves. So for me, a lot of the anger comes from like not being able to make choices and feeling like I don't have that much autonomy over the outcomes of my life, you know? Like, it almost feels like all I can decide on is what I'm going to eat tomorrow for lunch and for dinner. And I can't even make big decisions about the next 10 years of my life because I'm thinking to myself, what kind of a world am I going to be living in 10 or 15 years? Like, I can't even imagine it. And yeah, and I know it's an age old thing. Like, every single generation has felt the fear and the anxiety, but it's never felt like more real, if that makes sense. Like, there's almost something in the air, like something that you feel where it's like, this time it feels like it's for real, you know? And I think it's difficult to not live your life as if like the future is coming, like the future will happen, but it's also difficult to live your life with so much uncertainty that you cannot make definitive decisions. Like, you can't make decisions and say, this is a decision that I'm making and I'm going to stick by it because historically A, B, C, and D has happened, because these are historically unprecedented times, which I did not want to live through. Historically unprecedented times. This is not a good time to be a Gen Z or a millennial, you know? And I'm sure the other generations, older and younger, will feel this in a different way, but I feel like our youth has almost been like stolen from us. And it feels so unfair. It is so unfair. I think that's one thing that I think all the time is like, oh, this is so not fair. And your emotions are valid. They are so, so valid, because I have these thoughts in my head all the time, which is why I thought it would be nice to do an episode like this. I'm just constantly worrying and stressing and being afraid, and like I'm not having normal like worrying and stressing and being afraid. I think being worried about the future is normal, but the extent to which we are worried is shocking, and it's not normal is another thing. Like, don't think that like you're alone or something, because this is absolutely 100% not normal. The amount of worry and anxiety that we have to go through right now is not, it's not normal. So don't even worry, like don't even think, because I think for myself, I used to worry that like there's something wrong with me, like I overthink too much or like I'm stressing too much. But then with the other youth team members in the WWF group, like we sometimes have conversations and people will say things and articulate so well exactly how I'm feeling that like I come away from every like meeting that we have, I come away from it and I'm like, oh my gosh, like there's a whole group of people, not just the WWF team, but like a whole group of people that are my age that are having the same thoughts, are freaking out in the exact same way that I am freaking out. And I think that's another symptom of the society that we've built for ourselves right now, is that like we have almost convinced ourselves that we are alone in everything, which is not true. And also the climate crisis cannot be solved by one person alone. So acting as a collective is something super important and something that's like essential for us to like move forward and get where we need to be. And I think another thing is that I have other friends who are very much okay to stick their head in the sand, like out of sight, out of mind kind of. And it's, in the beginning it was very frustrating for me. Like I really couldn't understand why the alarm bells were only ringing for me. And it drove me crazy. For a very long time I would just like stay up, like just like looking at the roof in my room, just thinking to myself, like, how are we going to solve the climate crisis if I have friends, like people in my circle, people that I'm constantly telling about, like, oh my gosh, this is what's going on, if those people aren't getting it and they're constantly hearing the information from me, then like how are we going to solve the climate like what are we going to do, how are we going to get somewhere? And I think first of all, you need to let it go. That's one thing that I realized is like, not everybody is going to be the same climate activist that you are. And not everybody is going to do climate activism the way that you want them to do it, you know? So I think the most important thing is that you continue to like speak your mind and speak up and say things to people that you think will listen and people that you don't think will listen. Because eventually I have one friend that is like, she rolls her eyes every time I say something, but sometimes when she rolls her eyes, she also quotes me now. She quotes the things I said previously. If, say, for instance, she buys from like something like clothing from a certain like store, and I always tell her like how bad they are for this and this a reason, she doesn't even need me to tell her anymore. She will quote me and she'll be like, they are bad for A, B, C, D, and F a reason. And I still want to buy from them. And I'm like, you know what? Okay. As long as you heard me, that's going to have to be enough for me, because you cannot lose sleep over stuff like that. There are so many other things that we need to do. So if all you're doing is like speaking up, sometimes that's enough, because one day it will get through. And even if it doesn't get through one day, you can rest assured that you tried. And I think that's something that I've come to value a lot, is like trying and not seeing a result is also okay. That's so normal, also because we are living completely different realities as human beings. So one person is experiencing life in one way and you are experiencing life in a completely different way, and it's beautiful that you can still be friends with people that think differently to you. But it's also important that those people still love you, because even though we don't, it's not to say that she doesn't specifically like care about the environment or something, but it's just like her concerns at the moment with the climate movement are completely different, right? And that also brings me to the point that our roles in climate activism will look so different. So for me, I talk a lot. I think even my friends know that I have lots of opinions about everything. If I have read about it or watched a video about it, I will quickly form an opinion. And I will think about things very deeply as well. And so like talking and thinking and debating are things that come very naturally to me. And so it's easy for me to be the loudest voice in the room and to point things out and to say things. Also, something that stresses my mom out a lot is that I'm headstrong and also a little bit like shameless. Like I basically have less fear of people than I think she would like, just because I find it more important to call someone out than to like save people the embarrassment or something. But I have other friends who are very talented at other things. So the friend that I'm talking about is very talented at community building. So she's the kind of person that can really easily bring people together. And we need people like that as well, because we cannot fight the climate crisis on an individual level only. So we need people like her, because they are good at bringing people together and getting them to move forward towards a single cause, which is something that does not come easily to everyone. And we will also need our environmental scientists and our introverts who are doing other things, like the good work of collecting the information that we need to, act on things. And yeah, and I think the scale and the size of our activism will also look very different. So for me, like just having conversations with my friends before I could do this podcast did so much for me. Like in terms of feeling like I was doing something, it definitely like made a huge impact for me in my personal life when I felt like my voice was getting through to my friends, because if you change one mind, that's one less from the 8 billion that we need to convince, right? And if all of us are doing a small thing to change minds, then like imagine the impact. And I think like it's important to think of what you're doing in a collective sense. So just imagine all of us doing small actions all over the world in our own communities and how much of an impact that could have if we put it all together. Yeah, but with that, I would also say that the comfort of community is also a burden that we have to bear, because for me, I also feel a lot of guilt. So if I'm not living a completely zero waste lifestyle at the moment. I would love to at some point reach that level, but I still feel a lot of guilt for that exact thing, that I am almost not doing enough, if that makes sense. Like, I feel like I'm not doing enough. I know that we're all doing our best, which is like very important, and like we also cannot do better than our best, but I have moments where I'm like, am I doing enough? You know, like, is this all that I can do? Is this all that I can manage? Yeah, so I think that's also another emotion that I tie into climate anxiety. It's like this constant feeling of like, I can do better. So yeah, I think hold empathy for people, because yes, there is a climate crisis, but people also have like personal crises. Like, there are things also happening in people's personal lives that you don't know about and that you could never imagine going through yourself, right? So the saying is that like everybody thinks that they would rather have another person's problems until they see another person's problems and look at their own load and think, actually, I'd rather keep mine, you know? So I think we also need to hold space for people, because even while the climate crisis is happening, our lives are also still happening. So that person will have a birthday next year, and the next year their friend will get married, and the next year their friend will have a baby, and the next year another friend will start university, and like the next year they will have to grieve a family member or a friend or something. So I think there are so many other things going on in people's lives, and we have we need to also have so much empathy for people, because that's also a part of it, right? We need to have empathy for one another, because empathy is one of the building blocks of community. And we can only, like, as I've said before, we can literally only do this together. So this has been a lot of rambling for me. It's been interesting just speaking into a microphone and imagining all of the people that will be listening to this just like sitting in front of me or something, so that I can articulate myself well, I guess. But yeah, so I just want to end this episode off with a question that I ask all of the people that I interview, so the guests on this podcast. And I always ask them, like, if there's one thing that you hope that people take away from this podcast, if nothing else, like, what would it be? And for me, I would say, I would probably say that, like, there is hope. Like, your feelings are so valid. Like, you have every right to be anxious and stressed and worried and like, what do I do? Kind of an existential crisis mode thing. Like, I completely understand that, and it's okay. It's okay that you're stressed. It's okay that you're worried. So am I. Like, that's literally it. So am I. Like, me too. So yeah, I think just forgive yourself and allow yourself to be anxious, because we all are a little bit anxious. Not a little bit, a lot, but you get the point. So yeah, so am I. That's what I would want for you to take away from this, is so am I.